Good evening, everyone. It's February 18th. It's 5:30, and we'll begin the regular meeting of the Gates Mills Council at this point. May I have the roll call, please? Beth?
Eton,
Here.
Broom,
Here.
Deacon,
Present.
Steinbrink,
Here.
Turner. Someone make a motion to excuse council members Press and Welsh.
So moved. Second.
Turner and Deacon?
Wish them both well. Yes.
Yes.
Roll call.
Eton,
Yes.
Broom,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner. Yes.
I would not be surprised to see Ed roll on in here. He was, I talked to him an hour ago. He was still trying to find a way down. So
Was he?
his daughter said, I don't think so, Dad, but we'll see who wins that one. Okay, next item, minutes to the council meeting on January 21st. Beth, did we receive any written comments to you?
Not that I'm aware of. And I apologize that we only had odd number pages, but we got that straightened out. And Lori, I just wanted to say that I didn't mean to not give credence to the broadband conversation, but I thought if anybody wanted to know, they should really just listen to that whole 40 minutes and not make any interpretations.
That's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
If no comments, motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Lori. Roll call.
Eton,
Yes.
Broom,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner.
Turner?
Yes.
Okay, next item is pay ordinance number 1294 in the amount of $663,120. Included on the pay ordinance, you'll see an entry for $2,800 to JD Compass Studio. That is a architectural firm. We hired them to prepare a report that would evaluate the condition of the village hall and prepare estimates on what repairs and replacements might be. There's quite a bit of work that over the years needs to be caught up with. And they performed that work, including videoing each room in the village hall and identifying the various things that need to be done. Dave is here. If there's any questions, Dave can answer those questions. That's an unusual item for us. Any questions on the pay ordinance?
Move to approve.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, I had two questions on that pay ordinance.
Yes,
The two items that are for Mayfield Village, $20,000, and I think the other one was $72,000. I'm assuming that's for EMS,
Right,
ambulance service.
yeah, one is the check to them, and then one, it covers the life force amount, so we have to count it as an income and an expense.
Okay, all right, thank you.
any other questions? We had a motion to approve. We have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Scott. Roll call, please.
Eton,
Yes.
Broom,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner. Yes.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda in the mayor's report is the Gates Mills Land Conservancy. Nat Smith, former president and current vice president, is here with us tonight. We presented to council at the last meeting the annual report for 23, as well as their financial report, as well as the 24 narrative report, and promised that leadership of the Conservancy would be here in February or March to answer any questions that council may have or comments that they wish to make.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is this alive? Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to present to the council updates on the Conservancy's activities. By contractual agreement, the Conservancy needs to update the council twice a year on what we do, both financially and our activities. And since you have all written a summary statement of 2024 activities, I'm going to only highlight a few of them and update you on the year-end financials. As you know, in May, the Conservancy acquired a heavily forested parcel on Mayfield Road, currently known as the K. Perkins Preserve. And that was a bargain sale transaction where we spent $40,000 less than the appraised value. Last spring, we engaged a botanist to audit our 28 preserves, and we identified a highly aggressive invasive called the Tree of Heaven that we've started a remediation process with. This is a multi-year process, and hopefully we will eradicate that particular species on our preserves by the end of 2026. The Conservancy published 3 online newsletters last year, and we held our second environmental seminar in September. At its annual meeting in October, our membership elected 2 new directors, Phil Campanella and Alex Burchak. Ann Marchetto also joined the Conservancy's board as a mayoral appointment the same month. Jamie Character was elected as the Conservancy's new board president, and he could not be here this afternoon. We also had 3 long-term board directors and former board presidents retire at the end of last year. They represented in total 65 years of service. They were Rob Galloway, John Kramer, and Linda Oleko. In December, the Conservancy received its 3rd national reaccreditation from Land Trust Alliance after an extensive audit of its operations, its records, and its governance. The next LTA review will be in 2029. Last year, the village transferred $109,800 in 2 installments to the Conservancy, representing 50% of the Conservancy levy tax receipts for the year. In 2024, the Conservancy itself raised $52,000 from its members and its contributors. And for fiscal 2024, year ending December 31st, our revenues and expenses were as follows. Operating income was $55,400 compared to a budget of $49,700. Operating expenses were $54,600 compared to a budget of $49,400, resulting in a surplus income of $800 compared to a budget of $300. That's about as close as we can get to an audit perfection or financial perfection. At the end of the year, cash reserves at the Conservancy were $650,000 in the following accounts. Operating and special funds was $401,000. Stewardship fund, which we do not touch, we leave it there for stewardship and defense, was $218,000, and our levy fund was down to $31,000. As we enter 2025, the Conservancy can anticipate approximately $200,000 in levy distributions from the village over the next 2 years. With its commitment that we have at least $700,000 in endowment reserves by the end of 2026, that leaves roughly $200,000 to $300,000 that will be available for possible land acquisitions and easement acquisitions in the next 2 years. So that concludes my report, and if there's any questions from the council, I will take them with the time remaining.
I think the council and the village in general should recognize the substantial contributions of John Kramer, Rob Galloway, and Linda Oleko. They participated and they ran the Land Conservancy, and they put their heart and soul in it. And really the village owes them all a substantial debt of gratitude for their work there.
Scott, I'd like to then suggest that at the next council meeting, we'll bring a proclamation or such and ask council to weigh in on, approve that and sign that. It's, how many years did you say, Nat?
65 years in total.
Yeah, so it's 20-some per person. That's, it's half the lifetime of the Conservancy, so
Certainly is, right.
that's fabulous. And thank you and your current directors and officers for the great leadership that you guys are providing, both in the field and financially, as well as going forward with your plan. So we thank
It's
you.
our pleasure and our passion. Thank you.
Any other questions for Nat Smith?
Just an observation, you're going to get more money from the levy than you just read out because of the valuation of properties going up so much.
Well, as I said, it was roughly that range.
It's
It's-
much higher.
Well, that will be good news if it
Good, right.
happens.
So you, rather than 200 to 300, you have 300 to 400.
Why don't we get him the latest levy numbers that we know from the county?
I think Janet has them.
Right. But I'm not sure Nat has them.
Well, we will gratefully accept any surplus funds that come our way, so thank you.
50% will give up, right? Right.
Any other questions?
Oh, thanks for the extensive reports. Really helpful. Yeah,
Good.
appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nat.
Good job, thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, 4B, is the 2025 budget. At the last council meeting, there was a request that we present the budget to council, and we said we'd be pleased to do that. Included in the council packet is were the financial statements for 24, as well as a column for the 25 budget, along with a narrative that we have provided and the assumptions that we use to prepare the budget. I'll review with you the presentation and comment only lightly on the numbers. If there are specific questions on the numbers, we'll try to answer those tonight. If we happen to need specific information, we'll get back to you on those. But basically, the budget process, as the report says, starts in September with the finance administrator requesting departmental figures for both operating and capital needs from the 4 departments: police, fire, service, and administration. There are 3 village committees that play a large part in setting the budget. Insurance Subcommittee focuses on health and general insurance. The Wage and Benefits Subcommittee compares our wages to 8 to 10 neighboring comparable communities. These 2 subcommittees vote to recommend figures to the Budget and Finance Committee. The Budget and Finance Committee then considers these recommendations along with the departmental figures for operating and capital needs by reviewing the spreadsheet provided by the Finance Administrator. Revenue is estimated by the Finance Administrator with input from RETA as to our municipal income taxes, Cuyahoga County as to our real estate taxes, and Cora as to our investment income, and other similar sources for other revenue categories. Departmental heads present their budgets and their needs. The committee members review these and discuss these with the departmental heads, make sure their questions are answered. The road program is following a 6-year path to get all roads to a good condition. The Budget and Finance Committee then accumulates and synthesizes all this information in 1 or 2 meetings. Often those meetings are 2 hours each. The committee then votes to approve the budget and recommend the appropriation ordinance 425 to council for their approval. Council approved the 2025 appropriation ordinance as number 24-52 on December 17th, 2024. That's the process that we follow. Followed that for a number of years. Overall, about 24 people participate in that process, both those on council, the department heads, and former council members and citizens. What do the numbers show? The budget target is what I'll call a balanced budget, otherwise known as a break-even budget. We spend to the level of our probable resources without deferring or dropping essential elements that the village needs or expects. For 25, our village revenues and expenditures are budgeted at $7.6 million of revenue and $7,682,000 of expenses, creating a small surplus of $15,000. The majority of the revenue budget is real estate and municipal income taxes. The village receipts are dependent on the timing of the county's real estate tax billings, the payments by the property owners of those billings, the collection by the county of those payments, and ultimately their remittance to the village. As such, there is variability by month as to these tax revenues. But as to real estate, we do know the figure for the full year, usually by December 15th, but not this year. This year, we did not know that figure until January 21st. There was an additional 5 weeks as the county valuation adjustments needed to be approved by the state before the tax bills could be finalized and our revenues could be issued. As such, you'll see slower collections probably the first 2 months of this year. As to Rita, Rita provides to us a non-binding range of expected revenues. Traffic enforcement receipts are based on only 15 months of history at this point, so we have, we expect some variability in this item, and we have budgeted 25 revenue at the 24 level. The expenditures are under village control. The largest expenditure is for employee wages, benefits, and retirement funds. We have 26 pay periods, so there are 2 months throughout the year where there are 3 payrolls, not 2. All the expenditures, including payroll, require department head approval, and council ultimately approves both the appropriations as well as any contracts. As to the details, council has been provided the figures for the general fund and all other funds in the submission I gave you, along with the 2-page narrative, our notes and assumptions that go through the budget process. The committees mentioned above include a combination of council and elected officials, formal council members, and informed citizens. In total, 24 villagers and department heads have worked as a direct part of the budget process, the results. If there are specific questions on the process or the numbers or the details, happy to try to answer those now or get back with the specific information.
The real helpful description and the materials that you sent out in advance and the explanation. I just thought it was a good improvement to understanding the process. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Small point, the second paragraph in the numbers section, they relate to the general fund, not all funds. Doesn't say that, but it probably should.
That's correct. Thank you.
Mayor, I think we should keep our fingers crossed. The winter, I think, is doing quite a number on the roads, so let's hope our roads program number holds.
We have that. We've got salt, and we have, of course, as you know, one police officer who's been injured and is out on leave, probably up until March. Maybe the chief can comment on that later if he knows more specifically. So we've filled that spot with a fair amount of overtime. We're also in the process of finalizing our process for hiring one full-time police officer. We'll let the chief comment on that if he feels he's far enough along in the process to do that. Okay. Thanks for your interest in the budget and the process and the numbers. Any questions, let me know.
An observation, all this that's going on in Washington, DC, where funding is being cut dramatically, at least that's the attempt, will cascade through to the state, then to the county, and then to little places like Gates Mills. I have no idea how much of our funding comes via that cascading effect. And we have a similar set of issues with the Mayfield City School District too. They get quite a lot of their funding from the Department of Education. I don't know how that's going to affect us, but it's a big storm going on and we're not going to be immune to it. That's all I can say.
Thank you. Very little of our funding comes from the federal or the state government
Directly.
directly.
It affects some of the people you do business with.
Sure, could also affect taxpayers that might live here that work for the
Sure.
federal government.
So it's a big deal.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the zoning survey. Let me see if I could put this in perspective. So in May of '24, council received a motion from Councilmember Press that eventually passed by a 5-2 margin. And the motion was to proceed with designing and implementing a charter amendment that any zoning ordinance that either A, change the 5-acre minimum, B, modified section 1160 or C, encouraged higher density of multifamily housing must be submitted to the voters for resolution. After that time, we've had several conversations at council meetings about this issue. There were several discussions of this, including Mr. Broom's points about improving the notification requirements that were somewhat dated, and a stronger ordinance would perhaps be preferable to or in front of an actual charter amendment. There's also discussion that the Charter Review Committee, and one of those members is here today, had a chance to review the charter and had no such comment on any zoning changes. We proceeded to, over the next several months, to try to gauge the level of interest in the topic. Ultimately, we talked about creating a survey that would ask, if it was issued and finalized, two questions. One, would you attend a town hall to listen to more about the topic? And two, what's your point of view on keeping, amending, or changing the amendments? The survey was intended to move this item along in our discussions and to give council a survey document to review. That was all discussed in the prior meeting's minutes. In preparing the materials for this council meeting, on the agenda, I made a mistake in putting Michael Press's name next to the draft survey because some might construe that as he either endorsing or supporting that survey. I apologize for Michael for that inadvertency, essentially telling him I just put it there because he was the most consistent voice on the topic, and I thought he would maybe want to lead that conversation. Likewise, the survey provoked comments and thoughts from a number of council people. And as any survey, when you try to take something that's been around for 25 or 30 years, like our zoning rules, and condense those into one sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper in layman's language, it's not going to be as comprehensive or full or thorough as one might expect. So we're to the point where I need council's thoughts on what you want to do with this. The survey would require a fair amount of more work, and we could have 7 editors. That's one way to go. In discussing this with several of you, there are some that say there's not even an issue here. Why do we need to survey anybody or have a town hall meeting? We don't have any zoning issues hot and heavy in front of us. And there's some value in that point as well. So I'm just going to pause there and see if anyone on council has comments, perhaps lacking any specific direction. We just maybe have a motion to table this so that it's not on our active list all the time until we decide, until council decides what it wants to do with this.
Mayor, I appreciate the summary that you've given. And for me, this survey is a continuation of an effort to promote a false narrative. I believe that our villagers don't have a say in zoning issues that concern lot size and housing density. As you stated, this has gone on probably since the charter review report, which was in November of 23. And there have been different attempts, including a draft, as you said, charter amendment to bring this forward. These efforts have kind of died in council. There's not been any support that I can tell, and I certainly have not received comments from the community that there's any impetus for moving on this issue. At our meeting in September of 24, where we talked about zoning, it was a special meeting on zoning that the community was invited to, and we made some decisions at that point. I'm looking for them here. That That after discussion about changing the minimum acreage and yield plan in Chapter 1160 of the zoning code, all council members agreed that current provisions and language of 1160 remain appropriate and adjustments are not necessary. 2, after discussion about adjustments to required frontage, side lot and setback in the downtown commercial district, all council members agreed that no changes are required and that items of this nature can best be handled by P&Z. 3rd, changes to the historic district should be further discussed by the historic subcommittee for future review and presentation. And 4th, council discussed changes to walking paths, bridle trails, and bike paths as suggested for consideration in the comprehensive plan. All council members agreed that the change is unnecessary. So over this long period of time since November of 23, this topic about zoning and public input and decision-making has come up and again been tabled for a lack of interest. So for me, I would not support a pursuit of such a survey. I did share the survey, the draft survey, with a couple of residents in the community, and their response was confusion. What's the issue here? Concern about potential development that must be brewing behind the scenes if we're sending out this kind of survey. So again, not a very favorable response. In the comprehensive plan that we did just 2 years ago in 2022, there were questions about residents' support of their governance. And in those responses, because if we're talking here about a distrust of government or council in particular, questions like, how do you feel about the overall quality of services provided by the village? Police, fire, building, road maintenance. 94% responded good or excellent. Opportunities to participate in local clubs and organizations. 90% responded good or excellent. Opportunities to participate in local government. 80% responded very satisfied or satisfied. Value of services for the taxes paid to Gates Mills, 69% very satisfied or satisfied. The job Gates Mills government is doing at managing village finances, 73% very satisfied or satisfied. And finally, overall functioning of village government, 70% very satisfied or satisfied. And that was with responses from 542 individuals, 418 households, or 43% of residential addresses. So for me, I have a sense as a council member of what the village constituency thinks of this, thinks of our governance. As an elected representative, I feel I have the obligation to make decisions and not to continue to survey individuals about issues that really are not top of mind. We have a whole list of goals for 25 that need to be completed, and I'd much rather put my energy there. Thank you.
Other council members wish to make comment?
I've got a few comments. First of all, just to provide some context, which I think is important around the motion last May that passed 5-2, that was, in my opinion, sprung on council at the 11th hour. So I've kind of been a stickler for process about this. If we're going to change the charter, we need to follow a pretty strict process. And I think sending out a survey would be the last item on the agenda. After council has discussed it, you know, Michael and others have said we should bring Bruce Rinker in here to have a conversation. You know, to my knowledge, Bruce has not been in here. We haven't had any conversations with him. But I think this goes back to that motion that was passed 5-2. You can go back and look at the video and the confusion on everyone, looking it up on their phones, what's going on, you know, what's being proposed, votes being changed. And I just think it needs to be a lot more well thought out than what's been done to date. And I know Michael and others have brought this up on a consistent basis, but I don't see the work that has been done in reviewing the charter, reviewing what other communities are doing, so that we can go to residents and say, we have thought out every angle, we have looked at this, we've spent an exhaustive process, and this is what we think needs to be done. Now we're coming to the residents to get their opinion on what needs to be done. And I don't think any of that legwork has been done. Personally, I view 1160 as a safety valve, that if a developer wants to come into the village and try or attempt to develop a large parcel and come in and ask for variances, planning and zoning points to 1160 and says, there's your answer for trying to do what you're doing. So those variances don't have to be granted. And I guess the only other, comment I would make is I kind of look at some of the municipalities that surround us, Kirtland Hills, Wade Hill. I mean, I went and did quite a bit of work down in Cincinnati, Indian Hill, Coldstream, Terrace Park, all communities that look like ours, have similar demographics in terms of the number of residents, larger lot sizes, and none of them have a provision for voter approval. And I would want to know, why is that? And so those are kind of the questions that I would want to have, and I think council should have a robust debate about this if there is interest, and there doesn't appear to be any. But I kind of am with Sandra on this, that we sent out a survey that starts asking residents questions when during the comprehensive plan, we asked all these questions of people. If I can find it here. Should various types of future housing options be explored? Additional minimum lot sizes, 50% said no. Cluster homes grouped on only a portion of the developed site where a high percentage of the site is preserved, 57% said no. Single-family homes on lots less than half an acre in limited areas of the village, 70% said no. Townhouses in limited areas of the village, 64% said no. So I think we've already done the survey. The residents have already told us what their view is on all this. And if residents come and were to ask me, well, what's this survey all about? What's going on? Have you thought about A, B, C, and D? I don't know that I'd be able to answer that question at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have some comments. And it pains me that Michael's not here, because I would like to have this conversation with him. So I believe that the Councilman Press's motion was to consider whether we should amend the charter or not. And I voted yes, because I don't think there's anything wrong with considering whether we should do something. And I've now considered it, and I have to say that I'm not in favor of it after thinking about it. I mean, some of the work that Michael has done, I mean, he's definitely done a lot of research on this, and he's found other communities, particularly Mayfield Village, who has such a provision, and Pepper Pike is considering it, or apparently it's an issue right now. And I have to say, I'm happy for Mayfield Village, and I'm happy for Pepper Pike, but we're not them. And I've been trying to think, who are we? And Councilman Steinbrink pointed out that he looked at other villages that are like us, and they don't have that provision. Pepper Pike approved paths in the median on Gates Mills Boulevard. Thankfully, Mayfield Heights didn't. Mayfield Village allowed that ridiculous solar panel progressive next to the freeway. It's falling apart now. I mean, we can make our own decisions about how we're going to run our village, and what they do is up to them. And I don't think we need to be guided by what they do. One of the things about this, and I've mentioned a few times, is that even if we were to think it would be a good idea to say that any zoning change really has to start with the residents through a vote, I don't think right now, we have either the facts on the ground or, the zoning code the way we would want to have it before we turn it over to a more cumbersome process than getting it worked through on council and then council making a recommendation or passing a change, which is always subject to a referendum by the voters if they don't like what council does. I mean, I think we've got some lot size issues we need to look at. Quite frankly, one of the things that I think was driving Michael's concern was, we have 7,500 square foot lots, and I think there was a feeling that in the comprehensive plan, people were saying we should change our building code so you can build on those lots, because essentially right now you cannot without a whole array of variances. And maybe the real solution is we should change the minimum lot size so that you could build on those with some no variances or just a few variances. That's something we need to fix. There's other anomalies in the village that just come from being a village for a long time and having things that were built a long time ago, and we ought to address those. So one of the other things is that now the way the process works, and I went through 1160, and I'm not going to make everyone suffer through that again. I did that at our special zoning meeting, but initiation of any zoning change now starts with council. And I know that the 5-acre minimum lot size was put on the ballot, but that was still initiated by council. It wasn't initiated by residents. And I think that's, I think if we're looking at maintaining the village the way it is, then initiation by the council has always worked. I mean, previously, the minimum lot size was 2.5 acres until council decided that it would be best to make it 5, and then sought the approval of the voters, and they approved that. There has always been a segment of residents in the village, it may be a small segment, but that has always pined for some sort of a maintenance-free residential housing solution. I mean, there's long before any of the people sitting around this table were sitting around this table, there were suggestions of how to do it and ways to do it, and none of them have ever come to fruition. But there's always people that want that. And if we surrender essentially council's initiation role in initiating changes, perhaps a small group of residents could get together and they could initiate such a change through the ballot, the same way that special interest groups now use Ohio's 50% rule on changes to the Constitution to try to change the Constitution through the ballot box process. And so far, I think that it has worked very, very well. I mean, there's always been people that have wanted to have a bike path between the North Chagrin Reservation and the South Chagrin Reservation. Popular with some, highly unpopular with the vast majority of the residents. And so I think the way that these changes start now with council initiating them and discussing them, putting them out there, and if the residents look at it and say, hey, this is not what we want, they always have the right to do a referendum. And I think part of the concern that people have said to me is, well, we don't know, or we don't hear about these things when they're happening. And there's two parts to that, is we don't hear about them. And that's why I had proposed some changes to the notice rules in our ordinances, because people are getting notice in a different way than maybe we used to. Posting it just at the town hall might not get the word out enough. And perhaps we ought to make some changes to our ordinances that broadcast more more widely, or at least in more forms, notice if those things are going to come to conversation. But that brings me to my last point, is that every time I have a conversation, people will cite specific examples saying, well, we didn't know this was happening, or that was happening. And none of the things that they cite were things that were actually happening. They were just ideas. They were, so 781 River Road was never, a builder had an idea to somehow employ 1160, but never came with an actual, I mean, they had a drawing, but it was never the required plan. That drawing was nothing more than my college-age self putting a poster of Farrah Fawcett on the wall and calling her my girlfriend. It was nothing but a dream, and a figment of, and it had no chance, and it was going nowhere. And every time one of these has come up on the Jones estate, I mean, there's only one that ever even got close to the initial required stage, and they couldn't do it because it wasn't economically feasible, and they couldn't solve the on-site waste treatment. They couldn't find an on-site waste treatment solution. And so all of these things that are being held up as, this is why we need this, and this is why we need it. None of them had a chance. They were not even, they were just an idea. And so I think the idea of doing the survey and confusing people or riling them up is more than is needed. And after considering whether we should amend the charter, I don't think we need to. I think perhaps it would be a good idea to amend our ordinances to provide more expansive notice. But I think that will accomplish what Michael's trying to accomplish, and not to say Michael's wrong. I mean, he is right that people will come to him and say, I never heard of this. He's 100% right. And whether that's because the notice isn't getting out enough, or people are busy in their daily lives, and then they get a call from their neighbor, and the telephone game is in full effect. And it starts off here, and then this is happening next week, and if we don't go down and stop it, so I think to address at least the concerns that I have heard, I think notice would be better. I don't think we need to amend the charter. I don't think we need to do the survey. It's my 2 cents worth. 10 cents worth.
Thank you. One small clarification. The motion that was passed was to design and implement. So it was more actively worded than consider. We should just note that for the record. Laura, you have a comment?
Yeah, so I, as Craig said, I think there was misunderstanding about what the ordinance said, because I interpreted it as consider, and I think it's always good to consider. And we had our special meeting to look at zoning. Scott did a lot of work to really explain the complexity of the issue. And so I learned 2 things from that. One is that it's very complex. And the other is that I think that maintaining a balance between, and a check and a balance on legislation is very important. And I agree with Scott that the notification provisions and the communication needs to be improved. I mean, what you just said, Scott, is that a lot of it was a game of telephone, people learning. So there really needs to be more communication and clearer communication. So I agree that we need to either by ordinance or otherwise update the notice and communication requirements. I think that's very important. And I think that'll help us maintain that balance that we need. And so I think the survey is confusing because of what I learned about the complexity of the area. And as you said, Craig, the things that we would need to consider and do as pre-work to really get there, to educate people as to what they're being asked to, their opinion on. So that's my view.
Thank you.
Got a couple of
David?
comments. I wish Michael were here because he's been sponsoring this idea. But I think we shouldn't get too caught up in what we believe. This charter is amended when you're trying to address future councils. We don't know who those people are going to be. This village is going to live for another 200 years. And we want to be sure that we're doing the right things for the long term, not just for today. That's the first point. Second point is that Press and I are both on council because of the fiasco over 781. We believed that that was demonstration of weak leadership and poor governance. No accusations against P&Z. P&Z did exactly what they were asked to do at the right time. But there was a lot of talk going on with people in the administration involved. And he and I just said, this is wrong. This misled us, and others were misled too. But it was rectified because the thing is actually impossible to do. And the idea on 781 would never have passed it. But there were people involved in progressing it in the administration. Those same people were interested in pushing the comprehensive plan to not just discuss, but agree to recommend changes to 1160. And you were on that advisory committee, Scott, and an inordinate amount of time and money, therefore, was spent on that argument, trying to push that agenda item. And the other thing is that this is not a demonstration in Michael's mind or in mine of people not trusting council. It's a question of council trusting the people. And I believe that the zoning in this village is fundamental to our way of life, to our culture, if you will. And that if any significant changes are suggested, they should be approved by the voters, by the people who live here, and the people whose children are going to live here, long beyond after we're all gone. So they're the sort of philosophical ideas behind it. I guess what I'm hearing is that if we were to have that motion again, the May motion from last year, it wouldn't be passed by 5-2. It would probably lose by 5-2. So I think where we are is that council is saying no to this survey and no to entertaining this particular change in the charter. So it leaves plenty of time for a group of people to put together a voter initiative that would do just that. And I think this has simplified the way forward for some people. I'm prejudging that if we were to do a motion tonight, maybe we should to repeat that motion and see how we vote about it on it. But the main advocate is not here. I'm a big supporter of the idea, but we're clearly outnumbered. So they're my observations. The other thing is that Michael put together the survey language. It was modified without his input. It's become hopelessly biased and very confusing. So it was as if there was an attempt to deliberately derail the survey, in my book and in his. So I don't like that either. I mean, the simple question would be, do we want to do what Mayfield Heights has done? And Mayfield Village, I'm sorry, Mayfield Village and Brecksville. They have what they call mandatory referral. Every zoning change, at least my reading of their zoning rules, they go to the voters. And they've had one in Mayfield Village for 30 years, and they've lived with it.
You're talking about
Mayfield Village. And they take all their zoning changes to the voters. And Bruce Rankin was the mayor for all those years. And they are obviously very comfortable with delegating, or in my words, elevating the responsibility for zoning changes to their voters. They're the philosophical aspects of it. And we clearly have big disagreement across this table or within these tables. And it just seems to me that we should clear it up one way or the other. Yes, we're going to do this, or no, we're not. And if we're not, others might choose to.
Well, summarized well, and that's why it's here tonight on the table, because we have been talking about it for a number of months, and it's an active piece of, an active agenda item. I think I'm hearing two things. One, this is for council to consider in case anyone wants to make a motion. One is we table the topic until all 7 of you are here. That doesn't need to happen. We can obviously act with the council here. We have a quorum. And until we get further direction from council on how to proceed. I'm also hearing that we have a motion to perhaps improve the ordinance by changing the notice and communication requirements, and that we stop there and not proceed with anything that would change the charter. Is that a fair summary of the two things that I've heard? And so how might you all want to proceed?
So, well, I don't have them with me, but I drafted proposed ordinances. I mean, we'd be happy to pick them up at the next meeting, proposed amendments to the ordinances on the notice. As much as I would like to do away with this right now, I honestly, in good conscience, I can't do it without Michael here. I can't.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, and I,
Let's table it, let's table this.
yeah. And I guess the only other comment I would have is, I know Brecksville has that, I know Solon does. And if you look at an aerial of 50 years ago of Brecksville and of Mayfield, and you compare that aerial of 50 years ago there and here, there's a lot that's gone on in those places. And so I'm not convinced that just because it goes to the voters, to Scott's point, that a developer comes in and promises the sun, moon, and the stars, and it gets passed. And so, again, I go back to, I've looked at the aerials, you go back 50 years ago in Mayfield and Brecksville and Solon, and nothing against those communities, but they're not our community. And if you look at the development that's gone on, the expansion of the commercial districts, things are rezoned all the time. And I don't know that that's hard to prove a negative, but I don't know that that's made, if that's helped the residents in Brecksville, which was a single-family home community, or Solon, that now have significant commercial presences, that has taken away some of those homes that were there, if that's helped.
So what you're suggesting is that you don't trust the villagers to acknowledge what's right
No,
in Gates Mills?
I don't know if that's the case in Brecksville or Solon or elsewhere.
Just talking about Gates Mills.
Well,
To your point, we can't see the future, and I think we need to update the notification and communication requirements
let's
so that
talk
we
about it
can
next time.
maintain, excuse me, that check and balance.
Let's talk about it next time.
Well, David, I would just point out that I'm not sure that everyone always, when the 5 acre minimum lot size change was passed, it allowed time for people to go and to plat their properties at 2.5 acres. And a lot of people did that.
Yeah.
So I don't know that the 5 acre, as we sit here today, and I understand you're talking about the future and councils that we don't know. I have the utmost confidence that this council would do nothing to disturb the 5 acre minimum lot requirement at all. But the residents might not always, quite a few people, that the reason why the village maintains the appearance it has today, I would argue, has a lot more to do with the Land Conservancy and the efforts made there than it does with any zoning changes made by council or not made by council. And it looks like we've had a pretty good product up to now. I understand the debate about 781, and I can assure you that that thing had no chance of getting out of P&Z, and they were asking for an advisory opinion, which P&Z cannot give.
Sure, I understand all that.
And I will tell you that the drawing that was provided in my packet for P&Z, when we're at the meeting, it had a giant red circle with a giant red X over it.
I'm not talking about P and Z, I'm talking about the administration.
Understand, understand. And, but I, but, but I think I am sensitive to the fact that the residents sometimes feel like they don't know what's going on, and it's hard to know what's going on. I mean, look at, one of the chief, concerns that you always have is that, you know, just the timing of the packets, because everyone's busy. They're trying to get them out as fast as they can. And there's a lot to put in the packet. So I hate to put more burden on the administration with notices, but if we could make more notices when things like that are being considered, it might really help allay the fears that there's something afoot, when there's not. But I would make a motion to table this because we have to have Councilman Press here to have a full conversation about it.
And Ed,
Is there a second to the motion?
Second,
Thank
What-
you.
One other comment about, David, about your comment with regard to the process at P and Z, and there were three of us there, Scott and Craig and I. You seem to be in support of what happened there, but you've made some allegations about administration.
Yeah.
And you've done that in the past, and I think it's just unfair to kind of let that's set there. And
so we're saying that, well, I don't want to carry this conversation now. Let's leave it to the next time.
Mr. Mayor, President. Just so everybody knows, if this is tabled, it's not going to appear on any agenda. A council person will have to pass or make a motion at a future council meeting, seconded, to take it off the table to discuss. And whether it's discussed at that meeting or it's put on agenda for the next meeting, that's how that is handled.
Thank you for the clarification. Any further comment? Okay, roll call, please, Beth.
Eton,
Yes.
This is the motion to put it on the table. Thank you.
Broom,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
yes.
Turner.
Thank you, and thanks for the good discussion. Okay, we are on item 4D, which is virtual and or electronically conducted meetings. Would anyone mind if we moved up, Mr. Hunter just left, I was going to say if we moved up the broadband conversation. Dave, would you mind walking out and seeing if Mr. Hunter is available? We don't need to have people sit here for 2 hours
Yeah.
on some of these things if we
We
can.
also have Mr. Barrosman waiting on Zoom as well.
Yeah. So let me just change that. We're going to do item number 10, which is Resolution 2025-5. This is the second reading. We indicated that we would have, after the second reading, two things. We have a town hall, which is scheduled for tomorrow, but at the council meeting, which is now, we would have representatives from Chagrin Valley Gig present to answer any questions that council may have. Do we have, all we have slide-wise is the one slide. We could go back and forth, but we have the same slide deck we did last time, except we've updated the next steps. Mike, if you want to put that on whenever you get to it. And the next steps, Lori's updated. We've also got Tim Burlesman on the video slide. So Lori, let me turn it over to you, okay?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So we had the agreement on first reading. We went through some extensive slides. I think you probably still have them, and we've got extra copies up here if you want to see them, on the process that we followed, the benefits that we think Ohio Gig brings to Gates Mills, the RFP process that we went to, and then finally, some key provisions of the agreement and risk mitigation. And so next steps were to have a Q&A with Ohio Gig so that council members can ask questions. Several of you submitted questions, and Tim has those. So we've got Tim Barrowsman, the CEO Board Advisor of Ohio Gig, who's on, and then Nick Hunter, CEO of Fiber Capital Partners, and Drew, CEO of Ohio Gig.
Are there any questions that we have for Ohio Gig, or do we want Tim to respond to the ones that he gave him in advance?
Tim, would you want to go ahead and work through those questions?
Yeah,
Specific ones
if
that you had?
can you hear me fine?
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if I can share my screen, if you can view it, but I want to show an image in order to answer the first question, which was, the proposed prepayment of $455,000, exactly what future expenses are being prepaid dollars per month for 25 years. Since what we're offering is an Ethernet service or lit service to each building with the option to basically lease that long-term on a 25-year dark fiber. So it's really like a convertible option. I just kind of wanted to show what that network looked like. So I'm going to share my screen, hopefully, if I do this right. There's a crane would go by as I'm doing this. So can you see my screen? I guess I'm going to ask that question first.
Yes.
We can
Okay.
see the map.
Yeah. So this is a map, and when we started looking at Gates Mills and the service, the thought was we needed an anchor to come to Gates Mills, as you do with most small communities, and that anchor is usually either a K through 12 school and or the community itself. So what we identified is we identified 2 sites we'd want to make primary locations, 8 sites inside the village that are village critical sites that need to be served, and then the need to provide an egress point for this service out to the world for your internet. And what we did is the network is laid out so that for early entry, you'll see a light blue line. That is dark fiber that is there already that goes to a cell tower on Carpenter Road. That fiber was available to lease, which gets us into the community and gets us across the river in a very difficult place to reach. And then with that, we then complement that with builds up from Hunting Valley to bring service to the village, and then a route that actually goes over to 91, and then that route extends north into the Mentor, Ohio area. That's the way we're able to put a high resiliency network in place, put services or drops to each of the identified locations, and provide lit services initially with the long-term option to go to dark fiber, which is a mitigation event in case something unforeseen happened to Chagrin Valley Gig. So in essence, what you're getting with the prepaid, it's equivalent of $300 to the 8 sites per month. It's equivalent to $450 to $600 for 2 of the sites, which will act as egress points where the internet will come in out of diverse locations. And then we discounted those based upon the fact that you're prepaying. So that's the way you get to the 35,000 for what I'll call the 8 per site on the 8 sites. Then you get to 70,000 for the 2 sites that'll have the egress to the internet. It's easier to put internet at 2 egress points and firewall it there than having to put firewall equipment at every location. And then as a safety valve, we put that connection at the cell tower, which is where Everstream, the provider to date, has facilities and would provide an alternative if, in the unforeseen circumstance, something happened to Chagrin Valley Gig during those 25 years. So this provides service for as long as Chagrin Valley Gig is providing service in the community, with a safety option to have those dark fiber facilities laid out in a fashion that provides you a useful network going forward regardless of what happens to Chagrin Valley Gig. So that's as simple as I can make it through a picture. That's what you're really getting with that prepaid service, is you are anchoring this to put a network in place. And by putting that network in place, we can then start building out and serving every home and every business passed inside of Gates Mills. So I hope that answered the question, and wasn't too much. I'm going to switch back so I can see the screen, just if I have a lot of blank faces. So, Lori, if that answered, if anyone has any additional questions or add-ons to that, I can try to add on. But that is as simple as I can put it as to what's being provided. It's a very robust network for the money, and it is the anchor to get Chagrin Valley Gig to come into an area like Gates Mills and serve it on 100% passing basis.
Lori, just a quick question, Tim, who owns you're saying you're leasing the fiber that's on Old Mill there now. So is there already fiber either hanging from the telephone poles or in the ground along Old Mill?
So there is fiber along this route. It's a low count fiber. It was built specifically to serve the cell tower. That's what a lot of these regional guys will do. They'll build in to serve that site. It was also part of a grant program back in the 2014 area. So they built in to provide anchor institution services. Yeah, it's up on poles. What we'll do is we will use it short term. Whenever we do this, we lease it to get into the community. And then as we build out to every home and business, we will in essence overbuild that entire route. And we'll replace it with a high count fiber, and we'll cut over to that higher count fiber that's built underground for the better resiliency. You also see the route going out to the east. That route out to the east provides what I call a tertiary exit. So with that lease, we can actually get to another carrier, Windstream, where we can pick up 100 gig service and have an additional level of resiliency into the village.
And Tim, just I think to clarify that the dark fiber reference that you made, that is the indefeasible right to use, basically.
Yes, that's the indefeasible right of use that's built into the agreement for the long-term security of the village. So if there's no other questions on that, I'll move to the next question that I had. I have heard that Chagrin Valley Gig will not be bundling phone, TV streaming services, in which case, if I subscribe to CVG for internet service, what steps will I need to take to preserve my current phone, TV, and streaming service? So when we provide the high resiliency fiber connection, you can subscribe to a voice over IP service, or you can continue to pay for your legacy analog service, sorry. Or we can help you secure voice over IP. And when you have a resilient internet where it doesn't go out, where we're maintaining the 5 nines of reliability, you can use that service for your internet and it costs, or for your phone, and it costs about $9.99 for a residential plan from a company like Vonage, and they port in your legacy number. So there's no change in number. It's just you're making greater use because you have a high reliability internet service. With your TV, if you want cable TV service, it is true we do not provide what I call linear cable TV service. That's old analog service coming over coax. What we do provide is provide that resiliency and high quality connection to companies like Hulu and YouTube, as well as to other entities that offer live streaming TV that you can subscribe to. So you can subscribe to YouTube TV with local channels. I think YouTube TV is up to $65 a month. Get your traditional linear lineup, and you can watch service TV like that. In addition, if you don't feel you need I'll call it the linear TV type of service, you can just go to all streaming TV. If you buy any type of smart TV today, it comes with a program called Live TV, which you can put an off-air antenna to pick up your live channels or your local channels. Plus, you get a series of streaming channels that are free service without subscription. And then you can add to that Netflix, Amazon Prime, Stars, whatever streaming service you want. So that is the way you get it. You can also, Time Warner or Spectrum offers a streaming service that you can get without their analog cable TV. So you can get Spectrum streaming only services over the internet. You subscribe to those separately. The difference is we're providing a resilient internet connection so that you don't have to worry about your TV over internet going out during the middle of the Browns game, the Indians game, or the Buckeyes game, which is most people's predominant usage. So I'll stop there and see if anyone else has an add-on question to that, or if I addressed it.
I asked the question. I guess I don't understand. I didn't understand a lot of what you were talking about there. But I currently pay Spectrum a lot of money every month, but I only get one bill and I don't even see the bill because I pay it automatically. Now, if I switch to CV Gig, will I have other bills I have to pay? I mean, will it be more complicated for me administering my finances and my bank account and so on?
I heard that. I don't see it as more complicated. You will get billed by multiple parties because you'll get billed by us for the internet. We're focused on providing one service rather than being jack of all trades. And then you can pay for your YouTube TV via credit card by subscribing right over your television set and set that up for automatic withdrawal or debit payment. Drew, anything you want to add to that?
I would just say that, we're providing equal access to any provider you want to, right? So the traditional model was Spectrum or a cable network provider was the only distribution network available. With streaming and stuff, I come from the entertainment industry. The whole entertainment industry is trying to collapse the chain and get rid of the middle guys, which are the cable providers. So that's why you have a Disney streaming app, Hulu. Each of these companies are creating their own, is they're going direct to consumer. So for long term, I think, if you look at even the sports packages and that kind of stuff, like, with the Indians, if you want local Indians games, Bally Sportsnet the old Fox Sports has gone defunct. You now need to go to MLB.TV to get that service. So we don't really see, this is the way the industry is going, whether people want it to or not, way above at the content, essentially the content creators, right? So the thing we do is provide the ultra resilient network that allows you to, unfortunately right now, the way the industry's at, it is a la carte, right? There are certain services like Hulu TV and YouTube TV that Tim talked about where you can bundle some of those things. If you have Apple, you can even subscribe through a lot of those things through your Apple bill, and it just goes right through your app purchases and that kind of stuff. It's a technological shift in the whole industry, and our approach is, let's give you equal access to everybody and not force you into one way or another, and you get to make those decisions. I can understand how that can be more difficult than paying the one bill and you just got everything with one thing. Does that help at all?
Well, what you're saying is that people made a lot of money by bundling, and you're saying the market is making them unbundle.
Yes.
Gets more complicated, but cheaper.
Yes.
Fair enough.
But with every industry, then,
Sure.
somebody will bundle it back together.
Sure.
Yeah.
And,
Thank you.
and just one thing, you know, our people help with that. You know, I always use the example, there was so I think she 82-year-old lady down in Little Miami Gig when we first did it. And, you know, she had never had internet in her home. She had never streamed, and I helped her get it set her up with Amazon Prime. And she said I had to help her because she was buying her laptop and had to help her get that set up when it came. And when I went to do it, I called her and she said, well, wait a couple weeks. I'm watching Miss Maisel yet. And I got 2 more episodes to go. So if you come back next week, then we'll do my laptop. And, you know, she, once we set up we'll make sure every networkable device that you have in your home at the time, we'll make sure it's connected, and we'll make it as simple as possible and be there to support. That's one of the things different about us, about being a local company and having local staff. We're here to support on the ongoing basis.
I'm an 81-year-old little old man, so I have the same problems as your friend. down
Well,
south.
we'll be more than happy to make it as easy as we can for you.
So Tim, I have a question. So the agreement, has, the CV Gig will provide a minimum of upload and download speeds of 1 gigabyte per second.
Yep.
And it's a 25-year agreement. If I look back 25 years ago, I mean, I remember trying to download off of Napster music, and, you know, I'd have to start a song, go to bed, and then get up in the morning and it's still downloading. What if the standard becomes 5 gigabytes or 10 gigabytes? Is there an incentive for you guys to pump up your speed, or can you even do that on the equipment? Is that?
Yep. So we committed to provide at Gates Mills is what's called an XGS PON system, which means that's capable of delivering 10 gigabits per second to every home. We're starting at 1 gigabit per second because there is cost to deliver to the internet. And most people in the area are lucky if they're getting 300 meg by 10 meg or by 30 meg. So we said we would have a package that offered 1 gig by 1 gig at a minimum. Not everybody's going to take it today because, like I said, that's not needed by everyone. It's needed by people doing a lot of work from home and a lot of streaming. But the system we're putting in is capable of 10 gig. I will be honest, in the standards work is what's called 25 gigabit PON and 50 gigabit PON. And the provider we work with is already working on those products. And our system is meant to be scalable as a carrier so that we can do that through a swap out and not a full platform replacement. So part of that is, you know, if we plan to be in this business for the long term, you know, I come from a bunch of businesses in Northwest Ohio that have been in business for over 100 years. Started as a local phone company, now they're local internet companies, and they've been around. And we know that to do that, we will have to replace that back office equipment. Fiber itself, we feel, still has a 40-year life. I've seen fiber in use for over 20 years, still providing the backbone for the internet in the community I come from. And I don't see end in life for fiber to deliver up to 50 gigabits per second to the homes the way we lay these networks out.
It changes fast.
Yes, it does.
I would add one thing. So a little war story. In our first area of Little Miami Gig, our base package was, what was it? 4 years ago, it was 100. Yeah, 100 and 50 up, right? And so all we say to our customers is, if you sign up for our contract at $70 per month, the only thing we can do is provide you more speed for the same cost. What happened in Little Miami Gig was, as we saw the evolution of what was going on in the marketplace up there, we changed that $70 packet from 100 megs to 300 with no change of cost to our customers, right? So your expectations would be, as we continue to evolve, and like you said, the data usage continues to go parabolic, because that's what's happened, is it just gets more and more data usage as we all have 4 or 5 devices each, is all we can do is give you more speed for the same cost. Or that's correct, right, Tim? I mean, that's what
Yep,
we've always said.
that's spot on. That's exactly the way we
not
worded it.
Guarantee, right?
Yep, and that happens about every, I always say that happens about every 3 years. We give people more speed for the dollar. So what happens is the lowest tier just gets more speed, everything bumps up. So you get more speed for the dollar. And that's the benefit of a competitive marketplace.
That's what
And we have to make sure the systems we put in place allow for that type of growth.
That's exactly what Spectrum is doing right now.
Yep.
Yep.
The issue that some companies have, especially cable companies, is that's a DOCSIS system, and DOCSIS can't offer the upstream speed at the same as the downstream. The upstream has to run at about 10% of the downstream. So they can do 300 meg down, but only 30 up. And as we do AI computing, as we do more video conferencing, you need that upstream and downstream to be synchronous. And that's what our system delivers. So it's built for the future. We don't have to do that entire platform change out. We're putting in that next gen platform today.
So Tim, in your contract related to what we're talking about,
Yes.
it talks about upgradable at the
Yep.
discretion of the village.
Yep.
Talk more about that. Is it at the discretion of the village because at some point there's an increased cost or what?
Yeah, so we looked at where the village is at today and what your usage is, and what we're providing is a lot higher speed and bandwidth than what you're using today. So we provided you, I think that was the two gigabits was the
Yes.
solution here. If you want to upgrade early, if you decide you need, yeah, there would be an additional fee. But if you wait for that 3-year progress, you're probably going to see that 2 gigabits would bump up to 5 gigabits, to 7.5 to 10 gigabits over time. But if you want to accelerate that, you want it before we offer more bandwidth for the dollar, that would be at the city's discretion to do that.
Okay, all right, that's helpful. Thank you.
And I also think we talked about this last month, the advantage of getting in now is that, construction costs, labor costs, et cetera, are going to go up. So I think it's a real advantage for the village and our residents that we're doing it now.
Mhm.
So, if there's no other follow up on that one, I'll jump to the last question that I have. Lori, I know you were handling one of the questions. It says, in spite of the CVG system being almost entirely below ground, will its service be interrupted if the utility power to my neighborhood home is interrupted? And I'm gonna say no, but I'm gonna caveat that. That is if you have your home equipped with a backup generator, or you put a universal power supply in on your system where we place the entry equipment. Our system is all passive optics, but you have to have a backup generator to power your home network and the devices that receives it. The industry at one time used to build a battery into that unit. The problem was because those units were placed, and because of people having their own backup generators, those batteries would fail. And when the power outage came, you had nothing. So we do not provide that battery backup as a service provider. We'll provide you the recommendation. I do not like owning batteries inside of people's homes. And I don't like to get into the business of residential backup generators. As long as you have those things, your service will remain as long as your battery life on your phone or your laptop lasts. So you have an extended outage, yeah, you have a problem. But as long as you have a backup generator on your house, or you put a universal power supply onto that network of yours, although everything is continuously usable throughout that outage. Drew, anything you'd like to add, or Nick, anything to that?
So one question that came in from David was, what will be the process, expected timing and steps up to the service agreement being signed? So we're on second reading now. We've got a town hall tomorrow evening, 5 to 7. And Tim will be here, and Nick and Drew as well, to take questions from villagers. So we'll go on third reading at our next meeting in March. And if the ordinance is approved, then the mayor will have the authority to sign the agreement, and Ohio or CV Gig will as well.
So don't you have to ask residents whether they want to subscribe to this process?
Not at this point.
So do you imagine an agreement being signed without having any input from villagers whatsoever?
Well, the villagers we've had it on 3 readings, and we've posted the agreement. The slides are posted. We've got residents here. If they want to have input, we can take input tomorrow evening. Of course, we'll get input. We always do.
I think in Hunting Valley, I thought they sent out a specific questionnaire to people to ask if they wanted to subscribe.
Not at, I don't know exactly the timing, what you did on Hunting Valley, but I assume it was after the agreement was signed, Nick or Tim or Drew?
Yes. Tim, did you hear the question?
I didn't hear that question, no.
They're asking if there was a survey sent out prior to the signing of the agreement at Hunting Valley, or whether that was an agreement we struck with the community, and then they really kind of worked with us to spread the message out to the community.
Yeah, we struck an agreement with the village. We attended their strategic planning session and presented at it and got feedback from the village there. And then thereafter, the village actually indicated they had entered into the agreement. So they sent a letter out indicating they had signed the agreement with us and encouraged the residents to go visit the Chagrin Valley Gig website and register their home, because when people register their homes, we use that as a heat map as to where we go first within the village. We also attended, the village had a picnic, and we attended the Hunting Valley picnic. So we attended events, but that was all that all that the Hunting Valley communicated out, is that they had executed an agreement, selected us and executed an agreement with us. Thereafter, everything else was carried out on the Chagrin Valley Gig website.
So what you're saying is, from the moment the agreement is signed between CVG and the village government, you're taking the subscription risk entirely.
That's
Yes.
That's correct. That's what I was going to say. It's our entrepreneurial risk to win over the business of each of your respective constituents.
Of course, we'll help you do that because we want this to be a great success. For
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what Hunting Valley has been able to accomplish for us, is they've been great partners in getting the word out and working with us actively, but also, our work is there as well.
How many houses in Hunting Valley? 100?
272, correct? Yeah, 272 total, and I believe we're at an 80% pre-sign up.
Okay, good. Thank
And-
you.
So it's gone well, and we're excited.
Any other questions of Nick, Drew, or Tim? Okay, we'll consider this our second reading and move on to the next topic, which is virtual and/or electronically conducted meetings. Sandra, can I turn that over to you? Tim, we'll see you tomorrow. Safe drive up.
All right, thank you for your time.
Very much, Nick and Drew, for being here. Tim, thanks for being on, and we'll see you tomorrow. Much appreciated.
We appreciate you having us.
At the last council meeting, Councilmember Press brought up the issue of virtual meetings. So Todd Hunt and I were asked to make a report back. So my part of it is the large sheet that was in your packet. Made a statement up there about the state law, the fact that a village can amend its charter to allow this. And finally, our council members seem to have a really good attendance rate. On average, for the year 2024, it was 95%. So taking a look at some other communities, I talked to Beechwood, Hunting Valley, Mayfield Village, Orange, Mayfield Heights, Moreland Hills, Willoughby Hills, Kirtland Hills, Hudson, and Pepper Pike, which is not on the list. And I thought while I was talking to them that I'd ask the number of council members and how many meetings they have, because we've had some discussions in the past about meetings, council of the meeting of the whole, where you don't vote, but you still have a discussion. So I thought I'd gather that. Where you can see it's not applicable, and that includes Pepper Pike, they do not have virtual or electronic meetings. The locations where they do include Hunting Valley, which passed an ordinance, and they put it on the ballot for residents just last year. So, what did I put? Resident election on 11/5/24, passed 420 to 61. So any public body of the village in Hunting Valley can meet virtually or electronically by teleconference, video conference, web platform, or similar technologies, and attendance is considered as being in person for purposes of quorum and to vote. Moreland Hills changed their charter in November of '22 to allow virtual meetings at any time. And Kirtland Hills passed an ordinance in January of '23 amending their open meetings charter to allow attendance, or chapter to allow attendance by voting virtually at any meeting at the discretion of the chair of the council or that committee. So theirs was a little bit different. For the others, like I said, Beechwood, Mayfield Village, Orange, Mayfield Heights, Willoughby Hills, and Pepper Pike, doesn't seem to be an interest. Their sense is that it's important to be in person for meetings, to interact with residents, and also a concern about the potential for state law to intervene at some point and say that the votes that were passed virtually, where there wasn't a quorum in person, it could be null and void. So anyway, I just offer this as a summary of what's going on in some of our surrounding communities.
Your opinion, Todd.
And with that, I'll turn it over to Todd for his legal
Well,
opinion.
I don't make policy, I give legal advice. I've always had some trepidation about going virtual after it was rescinded by the General Assembly after the COVID pandemic had subsided somewhat. Mostly because if you violate the Open Meetings Act, your actions that have been taken in violation of the act are null and void. And you do some pretty important things here, and I didn't want them to be deemed to be null and void if you kept doing virtual, even with an ordinance, and perhaps even with a charter amendment. As you saw, I have researched this thoroughly. There's a lot of support in the case law of Ohio with respect to Gates Mills Home Rule Authority. You have one of the most expansive power provisions in your charter that you can do almost anything when it is a matter of local self-government. Generally, the courts have said things such as how you run your meetings is a matter of local self-government. I've always been concerned about the courts globbing on to what's known as the statewide concern doctrine, whether there's some statewide concern that meetings should be in public. And of course, that's expressed in the Open Meetings Act right now. But there are those cases out there that really do, I think, support your home rule authority. I'd feel much more comfortable if there was a charter provision, but I do believe that if you're challenged that an ordinance passed pursuant to your expansive charter powers would prevail. And so if you want to move forward with that, that's your choice. I believe that we could defend such a thing. There could be all kinds of machinations of when you use virtual and when you don't. As you know, in April, there will be a new state statute that will be in effect, which says that as long as you're a public body that is not elected or elected, or if you're not paid to be a member of that body, you can have a virtual meeting. So the state legislature has sort of set out a policy that says maybe legislative meetings of local government, such as this council, should not meet virtually. But I do believe that you have the home rule authority to move forward if you wish. Feel much more comfortable with the charter amendment, but I'd also feel pretty comfortable with an ordinance to that effect. So it's really a policy consideration, I think, on your part.
And I think Michael is eager to do this, I think, because he believes that if this provision is available, that people can attend remotely under prescribed circumstances and situations, it would broaden the number of people who might run for council. And one thing this village needs is competitive council elections, we believe, and I believe, and this might broaden the number of candidates. That's all. That's it. That's the whole rationale. Today and tomorrow, not just for us, but for anybody who might show up. One thing I did notice is that eight of 10 of these entities have more than one board meeting, more than one council meeting a month. And it seems to me with our list of priorities, which are we going to talk about that tonight, Steve?
Well, he's not going to talk about it. I updated the list to give you, but
It's a long list. And I don't think with all what I call the routine stuff we have to deal with in council, we can address the more complicated, unusual issues. We don't have the time. So the only alternative to me would be, it seems to be, more meetings. Sad but true.
it could be, or we could adopt the suggestion last meeting of this consent approach where
My
we
suggestion.
bundle up a half a dozen routine things and simplify that.
And that would liberate time within the one meeting a month to do the unusual stuff.
I think you also have to realize, I don't know how many of these, probably except for Hunting Valley, all of these individuals serve and are compensated. You know, we have the uniqueness, along with Hunting Valley, of not compensating council members or any elected official for any service. So you're asking people to come 12 times a month, serve on committees, and maybe come twice a month now with council meetings. You're starting to ask a lot of a volunteer.
Yeah, we have to pay them.
Well, that could be too. Any other comments on the nice work that Sandra and others put together on this document? Do you want to do anything with it at this point? Okay, well, thank you for the research and move on to the next item. Financial report. We're at 7:15, so I'll just refer you to the printed document, which has been presented on the website and in your packet. I'll say this is an overall comment. 1 month does not make a year. As you know, we are on a cash basis way of governing. The vast majority of our receipts are dependent on other people giving us their money when they collect it. So I wouldn't make too many quick judgments on what 1 month of January might be. In particular, real estate tax revenues, we know were not sent out until later. And as I reported earlier, in the case of the numbers that they gave us to rely on, 5 weeks later. So I'm not sure when the tax bills actually got out, what day. Hopefully it's not 5 weeks later. But it wouldn't surprise me if February's receipts are down slightly as well. The good news is we know what the amount will be for the year. And last year, our collection rate was 98% on real estate taxes. So it will come in during the year. Any questions on the financial report? If not, clerk's report. Beth?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Chief Minicello, police report, please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Everybody should have a copy of my monthly report. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Just a quick summary right here, kind of a busy month for January. As you can see there, we had a few domestic disputes in the village. We had an incident with this fourth grade student at the elementary school bringing a replica firearm on the school bus, and that was handled once the students arrived at school by school administration. And I just recently found out that I think that student was expelled, at least for the remain, I don't know how it's gonna work, expelled for the remainder of the school year. I think it's like online classes, and it could be a reinstatement next year, but I'm not sure exactly how that works. So, but the schools handle that administratively, no charges or anything from the police side of things. We had a drug overdose on the south end of town. Male was transported to the hospital after being evaluated by EMS. And bow hunting season has ended for some. That's important. 22, and I forgot to look up how many we had last year. It was around that same number though. So we had 22 harvested, and 14 doe and 8 bucks.
So the boys won, right?
The boys, well,
For once.
depends on how you look at it. And the one thing I wanted to mention, I talked briefly with Todd on this and Mayor here today a little bit. Effective April 1st, I think we're going to take a wait and see approach with this. But we have, a government agency has the ability to charge for public records, dash cam and body cam videos. Sometimes you get to these frivolous public records. It's all free right now, and it can be time consuming. We had one about 2 years ago. I mean, I tell you, if I total up all the hours, it was probably over 100 hours that our detective had to work on fulfilling these requests. And this is a scourge of frivolous ones. Anybody can, request, ambulance chasers, things like that. And we have to watch every single minute of that body cam to see if there's anything to be redacted on that. And so, that's an option. It's kind of a hot topic right now with the police chiefs in the area and whatnot. Most are taking a wait to see approach. And I think what, we would maybe look to do is anything over like 1 hour, we start charging. The max, it's $75 an hour, the max is $750. And again, it's just to discourage people, not necessarily our people, but, the ones that just kind of, hey, I want to get the video on this. Well, it takes time, it takes money to do this. So they're ready to do that right now. So it goes into effect April the 1st. And I know Todd.
Well, all the communities that I represent are facing this, and it's kind of an all or nothing thing. You certainly can't pick and choose who you
Right.
provide, who you charge. I know there's some communities that have talked about that, but I just don't know how you could do that. What we've seen, not only in Gates Mills, because I've talked to the sergeant who does this, and in other communities, is we're getting a lot of requests now from social media outlets for dash cam video and particularly body cam video. They look at police reports and say, oh, this is interesting. I'll put it out there on the internet. I'll charge 10 cents, 20 cents a minute. And if you get hundreds of thousands of hits on it, you make a lot of money.
Well,
And that's
YouTube
how it
channels,
works.
Right, they do
So-
that and they charge advertising, right?
Yeah. So it probably makes sense to try to put a little bit of a damper on that by charging. But then it puts a burden on the administration to keep track of time and to bill
For sure.
it.
David, your gross margin's good when your cost of goods sold is 0, right?
There we go.
Thank you, Chief.
Couple of
So
questions,
how,
if I may.
yeah, me too. Go ahead.
Comparing January with December, January passes was much higher than December, but the number of citations was much lower.
A lot of that's weather. Obviously, there's a lot of seasonality to this. January is a rough month, obviously, with the snow on the ground and, historically, and, I could just tell you from experience, I mean, people drive faster when it's nicer out.
Maybe they go slow when it's bad weather.
Oh, for sure. So, they did, you'll see there in my notes on January 15th, a technician came out and he had to, correct the eastbound camera. So we expect those numbers to be a little higher because it was corrected on the 15th. So then we have, half a month there of, true data, the last 2 months when we know things are working correctly.
Last question. I thought the FBI piece on scams and so on was going to be broadcast over Zoom.
Well,
Because it would be good for.
well, we were going to go ahead and, I hope that we get that recording. I was talking to Mike Feig about that here just today. I guess there was a hiccup and it may not be recorded. So we're gonna know more on that, I think, in the next day or two. So, Mike's gonna try to rescue that for us if he can.
Well, yeah, what would have been helpful would be the video. I mean, live and on demand. Which
I think there was a problem because of the tree canopy meeting that happened first. And it being Zoomed, it was affecting them starting up this meeting and getting it the
So
right
you
way.
intended to do.
Oh, so certainly we did.
The next.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
yes. And we had a nice turnout. We had about 40,
Yeah, how
counted
was it?
40
How
or
was it?
45.
How was it?
Pardon me? Sam?
How was it?
It was good. It was really well attended. I think I counted 40 to 45 people.
Good.
Scared the bejeebers out of me.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there really is. I mean, there's a lot going on out there today. And, now some of this FBI outreach, I mean, they're talking about maybe doing away with some of this stuff because in light of everything that's going on right now. So we were able to sneak him in, which is good. And he's fairly local, so,
He was good.
he made it work for us. So if there's nothing else, that'll conclude my report. Thank you.
That was it. That was it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chief, Service Department, please.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. You should have received a copy of my monthly report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. One thing I would like to add to or update a little bit more, my third paragraph in dealing with the salt. As you can imagine, we took some additional deliveries this month, the month of February, and we are getting close to our agreed upon amount to purchase for the year. And I mention this because I'm pretty confident in saying that this year we will not need to pay for the typical salt storage. Of the last 6 years, 4 times we did have to store some of the additional salt because we had no room in our salt bin. Of those 4 times, the typical average cost was about $4,200. So we will have that. We won't have that bill this year. So some savings there, which is, I think, a good thing. If there are no questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Tom? Fire Department report, please.
Thank you. I submitted my written report. I did have a question about several of the calls where it says FIU. As I stated once before in one of the meetings, we're a part of a regional area. Gates Mills was originally a part of the Hillcrest area with 9 departments. We're now part of the Heights Hillcrest area. And part of that agreement is that we provide people for some of the specialty teams. Right now, we have 2 people on the FIU team, and we have nobody on the technical rescue team. Hopefully that'll change in the future. But that's what the FIU call out was for. I'd also like to add, we gave a letter of commendation for the August call 157 to Assistant Chief Jameson, Lieutenant Paul Nemistel, firefighter Nick Nemistel, and firefighter Armando Farinacci. Also a letter of commendation to Captain Michael Feig for acquiring reimbursement funds for the August 24th storm. I'd also like to thank Sue Reed from the Chagrin Valley Times for the excellent article about our firefighters and our cadet program. There's a copy of it over here if anybody would like to look at it, and that will be posted in our fire station. I'm open to any questions.
Tom, you may have just said this and I missed it, but the item here on Cedar Road on 124 in Cleveland Heights,
Yes.
was that by any chance the big apartment fire?
That was the big
Wow.
one, yes.
Wow, so they came all the way out here for help.
Well, yeah, again, when they put out a call for the regional team, it's just like, for example, tonight, while the council meeting or the
pre-council meeting was going on, we actually sent an engine company to Richmond Heights on mutual aid. So we're in that, we're part of that region now. So whenever they call for assets, we send.
Yeah, that was a big fire, wasn't it? Huge. Yeah, thank you.
Just a footnote that, we did get notice, I don't think I mentioned this last time, I'm not sure we knew it, but, we did get notice from the state FEMA organization, they would be reimbursing us 75% of $80,000, so $60,000 roughly for the costs that we incurred on the August 6th storm. It was a different set of calculations, a different number, and a different reimbursement rate, but as Tom said, Mike Feig and a number of others put together a lot of effort to get those dollars in. So certainly deserving of the letter of commendation. Okay, thank you, Tom. On the agenda, item number 10, we covered resolution 2025. Next item is number 11, motion to obtain bids for the 25 guardrail program. Chris, can you give us a little update on the guardrail program? I'm not sure anything was in your packets, so we'll rely on Chris's notes.
If anybody would like a full set of the plans and specifications, we're more than happy to present them. We were provided, after some discussions internally, about having some areas of guardrail that were in desperate need of repair or replacement. We were provided with about $100,000 budget in this year's budget to either remove, repair, or replace certain areas of damaged guardrail. We did a village-wide inventory of guardrail and determined those areas that were in the worst shape and prioritized them kind of as really bad, bad, and kind of bad. And we have established a priority within that $100,000 to start with the worst and work towards the best, much like we're doing with the roads. And our hope is that when the bids come in, it will allow us to do all of the $100,000 worth of work that we have scoped. If not, we'll do as much as we can, and then we'll propose to either extend this year's contract if council so wishes to do that, or we'll come back and do a follow-on program next year. But this is just to go out to bids. First advertisement will be next Thursday, and then we would open bids in time to have a recommendation along with the road program for council for next month.
Where's a really, really, really bad one?
If you go on Chagrin River Road, north of Brigham, as you go through the S-curves, take a look at that guardrail. That's in pretty bad shape. Like it's been hit by a few cars and trucks, maybe a few deer. I don't know what else, but yeah. Yeah, where trees have fallen across the guardrail. There's areas where the posts have just rotted out from the inside out, so.
Wilson Mills?
Yeah, Wilson Mills. We've got, Chagrin River Road, Wilson Mills, Sherman, Old Mill. So, yeah, Brigham. I have a complete list by address in the specs.
So if I recall, from when we talked about this, the total is maybe more like 130 to 150.
Yeah, depending on the price. I think if we were to approach it as individual smaller projects, we would have an escalated price per location as a result of it being smaller jobs. Bundling it all together, I'm hoping that brings the price per foot of guardrail replacement down.
The point to council is we may not get all of it this year.
Yeah.
If the prices are more like 130, we're thinking somewhere between 80 and 100 this year. We'll see where the prices come in. Second half of that, like the roads, would be done the next year. So may I have a motion to obtain bids for the 25 guardrail program?
So moved.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, David. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Eton,
Yes.
Broom,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner.
Yes,
Thank you. See you next month with
Thank you,
numbers.
Chris. Okay, the next four items could very well fit under that consent approach. Ordinance 2025-6, this is an ordinance authorizing all actions necessary to accept the Northeast Ohio Public Energy Council, NOPEX 25 Energy Community Grant. We have to have this documentation to be able to accept the grant. The grant, I understand, is going to be about $8,000. We have not yet earmarked where that money is going to be used for. We won't do that until we get the grant or get closer to it. But I would need a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved.
Thank you, Scott.
Second.
Thank you, David. Roll call?
Eton,
Yes.
Broom,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
And then a motion
move
to
approval.
approve. Thank you, Scott.
Second.
Thank you, Sandra. Roll call?
Eton.
Yes.
Broom.
Yes.
Deacon.
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
Okay, item 13, ordinance 2025-7. This is an ordinance to amend the annual appropriation ordinance to increase certain appropriations and other expenditures of the village for the year ending December 31, 2025. Some might ask why, if we're only 6 weeks into the year, do we need to already approve the numbers or expand on the numbers that we said we shouldn't need much change to? So the first one is from the water fund. Because we do this on a fund-by-fund basis, you can't just rely on the largesse of the general fund to take care of all these things. The water fund bill that we received from the City of Cleveland Water Department was $25,700 and change. We had appropriated and budgeted $25,000, not knowing what that number would be when we did this. So we've paid that amount, but we owe them about $750. So we've asked for the appropriation to be increased by 1,000. Secondly, before you all run to approve this, the other appropriation is for refunds to Rita. We don't budget refunds, and at times Rita comes back to us and says we need to refund money that we've collected to certain taxpayers who've paid too much. And that amount is $35,000. So we don't budget for that or plan for that. We get that when it happens. It doesn't happen that frequently, but it does happen. So that would be an additional need from the general fund. So with that, can I have a motion to suspend the rules?
Second.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, David. Roll call, please.
Eton,
Yes.
Broom,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
We have a motion to approve ordinance 2025-7.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Craig. Thank you, Lori. Any further discussion or questions on that? I know I ran through the explanations, but you may have a question or comment. If not, motion to approve 2025.7, roll call.
Eton,
Yes.
Broom,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
Okay, resolution 2025-8 and -9. This is two resolutions that will authorize us to, in the first one, purchase the truck chassis and cab of a Ford F-550. The one that follows that is to separately purchase through a different company, through Best Truck Equipment, the dump body, the snow plow, the strobe lights, and the associated equipment. Both of these were done through the purchasing cooperative that's available for municipal equipment. These are the best prices that we could find. They were both a little bit higher than the budget. We're about $8,000, I think, higher than the budget. Dave, if there's any questions, hopefully you can answer that, but that is where we're at in terms of the truck, and the body and the snowplow. So on resolution 14, I need a resolution to suspend the rules, please.
Quick question.
Yes,
And
sir.
maybe it's just a typo. The dollar amount in the first paragraph and the second are different.
Correct. We sent out a revised item, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. All right.
The second number, the larger one is the true number.
Okay.
Yeah.
I missed that.
You should have that in your inbox.
Motion to suspend.
Thank you. Second?
Yes.
Thank you, David. Roll call, please.
Eton,
Yes.
Broom,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
Motion to approve 2025-8.
So moved.
Thank you, Scott.
Second.
Thank you, Lori. Any comment? Roll call, please.
Eton,
Yes.
Broom,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
And then resolution 2025.9, motion to suspend the rules, please.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Scott. Second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Lori. Roll call.
Eton.
Yes.
Broom,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
Move to
Okay.
approve 2025-9.
Second.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Lori. Any conversation? Thank you. Roll call, please.
Eton,
Yes.
Broom,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
I do wish to give credit to Janet, who came up with a time-saving item to save me the embarrassment of not knowing when to suspend the rules and when not to. I now have a cheat sheet, so I don't have to go through that thing to say, how about now? Okay, so thank you, Janet.
You'll get used to it.
Okay, any business from the audience?
They left.
Megan,
Megan.
thank you for your patience. Does everyone know Megan Perez?
I made it this long. Yes, Megan Perez. So just a couple things. I regularly turn into council meetings, usually over YouTube. And when I was looking at the packet for tonight's meeting, noticed the priority list and that there had been a special council meeting. So going along with the discussion earlier about kind of notification to the public, I think it might be helpful if there's a Gates Mills Connect email for special council meetings to make sure that people are aware of them, especially because the priorities discussion that you all had might engender some more enthusiasm than like the consent agenda. So the Mayfield Board of Education, in addition to the consent agenda, does email out when there's special meetings and the purpose of those so that people know, in addition to posting it online on the website, which most people probably don't go to regularly. So that's one thing. The other thing is just having watched that, I know there was Zoom participation there and there were some challenges. So I just encourage you guys to think about that as you think about whether we engage in Zoom meetings in this forum. And then the last thing is that there was some notes about concerns and external perceptions about Mayfield schools raised at that meeting. So I just want to remind the group, and I know you all know this, we've got the Mayfield School Liaison Committee body. We're actively working to help to address misperceptions about the quality of Mayfield schools, and we'll continue to work with council on that. Council members who have concerns about addressing that are welcome to reach out to us, and we can continue to partner. I think part of that starts in this room and kind of the narrative that is raised about the quality of the schools to our constituents and to those external parties. So, unfounded concerns or statements about the quality of the schools or the district's commitment to this location and Gates Mills Elementary don't really contribute to that. So, hopefully we can continue to engage on those as we move forward. And that's all.
Thank you, Megan. Any other items from council? We struck, maybe incorrectly, the other council matters item that was on the agenda because we beefed up the beginning, but are there any other matters that council wishes to bring up? Now I'll have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Moved.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, David. I'll do roll call.
All in favor?
I usually do that. Roll,
Aye.
Okay, Eton,
Yes.
Broom,
Yes.
Deacon,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner.
thank you. Meeting's adjourned.